Oh, yeah.
The Christian
Yes.
singer? Okay.
Yes.
So Toby Mac, so I was at a Toby Mac concert back earlier this year, and Toby Mac has this quote he says, in every exchange you have with another person, you are either giving life or taking life away. And it's your choice. There is no neutral exchange. You're either giving life or taking life away. And it's your choice on how you're going to live your life. I just love that.
Yeah.
I
love it too.
I do too. I've read that
too.
from him somewhere before, and I thought it was phenomenal. And he's
John,
right.
And John, I'm just like you, man. Like every day's Saturday to me. Like I don't care. The roof could have just fell in, and I'd be like, man, now we can just see the sky without any encumbrances. Yeah. I'm gonna find a silver lining every time. So, yep.
So do you want to hear my quote about that? So the old saying, every cloud has a silver lining, but sometimes you really have to look really hard to find it. Mm-hmm. And that there, I think, is the key thing, because sometimes it just seems everything seems too bleak. But if you really look, nothing negative ever happens without something positive happening to you.
Exactly.
So that's true. Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about you. Yeah. So I'm gonna let you tell my audience a little bit about yourselves and about Face Brand, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. Well, I guess it all started back in 1988. My story did, or my, let's say, professional career started back then. I went into radio sales. Before that, I actually sold vacuum cleaners door to door. I did it for 3 years, paid my way through college. Now that fascinates some people, right?
Fascinates me.
Yeah, it was a tough thing. And I realized very quickly that, hey, if I want to get indoors, I need to have a story, right? I need to be able to tell them why I want in their home and how what I'm about to show them can change their life, right? And it sounds very dramatic because, you're dealing with a vacuum cleaner, for God's sake, right? But it worked. By golly, it worked. And I did really well. I paid my way through school. And I guess the last 2 years of like a 6-year long degree, which was supposed to be 4, we won't talk about that, I was in the radio world. I was discovered selling vacuum cleaners by somebody in the radio world. And as soon as I got to radio sales, I noticed that there were people, business owners in the market that were just like rock stars. People wanted to talk to them all the time. They were noticed everywhere they went. They were like celebrities. And I wanted to know how and why. And I noticed that they were the voice and the face of their business. So in other words, they were featured in their radio commercials. They did their own. They were in their newspaper ads. They did their own TV commercials. And back then we didn't have the internet. So I noticed that right away. And I began to pay attention to that. And I began to bring some of my clients into the studio and pretty much force their hand at creating their own commercials and telling their own story on air. And that's kind of how I got into the personal branding world. But the other side of it, the not so glamorous side of it, is that when I first got into sales, I noticed right away how many doors were being slammed in my face. If I didn't have a free lunch or tickets to the big game, they didn't want to see me. I was just another, an annoyance throughout their day. And I realized very quickly that what I was working on teaching these other people, I needed to look at for myself. If I wanted to be seen differently, I needed to change the way I presented myself. And so fast forward, by the time Michael and I met, I have been doing what I did for like 24 years. And then Brandface came along. The idea for Brandface came along. At first, it was going to be just a book, teaching people the personal branding principles and kind of like a guidebook, of how to get this done. And around that same time, I met Michael, and he became my very first Brandface client. He is in the world of real estate on the other side of the fence, right? He's in real estate. He's an investor, an auctioneer, broker. And so I was going to help him with his business. And that's kind of where we met and where Brandface really started to get some wind under its sails. And the idea came to me, hey, this is more than just a book. It's a business. And I'll let Michael kind of pick up from there, John.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was, like we talked off air, I was a real estate auctioneer. And it's sort of where my craft was, cars and real estate in the Southeast. That's pretty much what I did. And like you, serial entrepreneur, I worked for 3 months for somebody right out of high school, wanted me to be an engineer. It was an engineering firm. I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to be an auctioneer. My mom cried, said I'd starve to death. We still laugh about that today. But I did. My mentor told me to get my real estate license, and I did that, and never saw myself as a broker ever. But then when the mortgage debacle hit, because of my experience level in selling real estate and as an auctioneer, I teamed up with a company out of Irvine, ended up being involved with over 65,000 residential transactions through that process. Had offices in Irvine, California, Seattle, Washington, Manhattan, New York, Miami, Florida, Dallas, Texas, Chicago, Illinois. We had offices everywhere, and we were running around selling these properties that the banks couldn't get rid of. But good auctioneers are working themselves out of a job. Hallelujah. The market came back. I was an investor, so I wanted it to come back to my hometown and twiddling my thumbs, wondering what to do. Bought a piece of property. The other agent really gelled. She and I gelled well together. She was an older lady, had been a broker for many years, decades. She said, "Hey, let's open up a brokerage." And I said, "Okay, if you'll help me with it." And then we did. And about 2 weeks after that, she said, "Your marketing stinks. You need my niece." And Tonya was her niece. She was telling Tonya to call. Mike was expecting your phone call. She was telling me, Tanya's expecting your phone call. She was like beating us up, matchmaking. Finally, I get this phone call from Tonya. She's like, "I don't know if you're supposed to call me or I'm supposed to call you, but here I am, and here's what I do." And I was very mean to her, John. I was. I told her I was in San Bernardino, California. And I said, "I've had 5 others just like you, and I don't need another one." And she popped back, "You ain't never seen anything like me. And you need me, whether you know it or not." And so I raked her over the coals for about 2 weeks, see if she had the goods. And I realized real quick she did. And I said, "Okay, I was wrong. I've never had anybody like you. You know what you're talking about." And she did, but I didn't know she was using the brand face principles, the idea of personal branding. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know that was even a concept. She was just, to me, it was just, she was building out my profile and my business that I was the face of.